Hello and welcome back to the Legendary Resistance, where every game is legendary. Today we're bringing you a really fun discussion video about how to make your combat more interesting. Basically, we've got 5 steps, 5 ideas to make your combat more interesting for you. So yeah, reminder, I am Adam.
And I'm Michael.
We're 2 DM/players here at the Legendary Resistance, and let's just get right into it.
All right.
All right.
Stay resistant.
Our first one is use of terrain and cover. So basically, a lot of combats I see, especially with newer DMs and newer players, they end up just having a battle mat, which is fine, but they don't think about cover when they have a battle mat, or if they're online and they make like a grid and they're walking around and just attacking the baddies. They don't think about 3D cover. It's a little bit easier when you have like terrain, but just working it in is a cool way to get players to basically interact with their environment. Look for cover. Use those cover rules that nobody uses that are actually really fun. Yeah.
One of the best parts as well is being able to use items or maybe even a treasure chest that could have items in it. It makes players think outside the box other than I hit it again and again over and over. Like have a bucket of arrows that's like on the side and you get a sense of a little bit of mystical aura from them, so you know that they're somewhat magical and anything like that. Or it could be even like a bunch of barrels and you could describe, oh, this is from a certain flavor of wine from something like that. It's even able to incorporate more immersive role-playing.
Well, and you see that in movies too. So like, thing that comes to mind is in the 4th Pirates of the Caribbean movie. They're fighting in a wine cellar, and so he takes his sword and he just like punctures one of the giant wine barrels and starts blasting all the people attacking them with wine, and they're like slipping and falling, and then you can set it on fire or something, things like that. That would make combat more interesting.
Yes, because it's always about that immersion. What people are looking for D&D is to get into the game as best they can. So having things to interact with and just visually being able to see it is one of the best ways to get your players to become creative and have a better experience.
To number 2 is having different phases or events that happen over time in your combat.
Absolutely. One of the best ways to incorporate a time pressure or like a feeling that we need to get this done fast to not make your combat seem dragging out and too long is to incorporate some kind of timetable, whether that's like an eruption of a volcano and your players need to save a town as it's being destroyed by lava monsters or whatnot. Trying to have a timetable and even making it visual, like a pie chart or having a number chart down saying, all right, that's number 1 round, everyone. Once we get to round 4, the entire place will collapse, giving them some kind of time pressure to make sure that their actions are being useful. Every single round makes them get super creative and not just sit around for their next turn.
A good example of this actually is in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, which it has a one-shot in there because it's a kind of a bunch of one-shots. But basically, the party is hired to go to a shipwreck and recover a giant like vault chest thing. And they go to the ship and they start to make their way down. It's in the hold at the very bottom. So they fight their way down through the ship or maybe sneak through things. And they finally get down there, they fight the things there. As they get the vault, it has the ship attacked by this giant octopus. It's not attacking them, it's just attacking the ship. But it's destroying the ship over a number of rounds. And so they have to get the heavy chest off the ship, getting past anything they didn't decide to fight on the way down. And basically, every round there are different things that happen because as the ship is destroyed. So things become difficult terrain. It starts taking on water from the bottom. It starts to like tilt and skew, and so they have to like make their way up different areas. So things like that, honestly, my players loved that. They had so much fun. They finally got off right as the ship just collapsed into the water. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Number 3, we've got legendary/lair actions.
Yeah, so legendary and lair actions are something that people don't really think about at low levels. People tend to think of them as like these legendary bosses, these like huge monsters that like maybe there's an ancient dragon that has lair actions or a beholder that has lair actions. but you can actually do it for smaller things at lower levels. And it's actually really cool depending on where it is. Maybe like if you're in a tidal pool, maybe there's a like tide that comes in and like makes everything difficult terrain for a round, and then like the wave goes back out and then the wave comes back in.
Or you're in a swamp and the entire thing, you all start sinking at the end of each round, and you have to make a strength saving throw to try and pull out, or you start sinking and you get no movement.
Yeah, so those are kind of cool layer actions, but also legendary actions. Just giving a level monster the ability to do things on not their turn can have a hugely like positive effect on your combat, especially if you want to have it feel like a high level combat where you have one baddie and you have like 4 or more players. So that action economy, they're getting 4 to 5 turns for every one your bad guy has.
Absolutely.
So you can have a lower level baddie, but let them move more so that it feels like more intense combat.
One of my personal favorite layer actions is the spawning of more minor baddies. So the big bad, like let's say you're fighting a small cult, and the cultist leader is like, ha ha ha, watch me, and he's attacking them, and he's obviously low leveled. But at the end of each round, he'll call for help, and a bunch of people it will roll to see how many people arrive, which also incorporates we need to deal with this fast. It's one of those keeping things under pressure.
Yeah.
When actuality, the timetable's about the same, it feels like things are going much more quicker and much more intense.
That does remind me, I also like to pull from other games, whether it's RPGs, board games, other mechanics that I've found. And there's a really fun mechanic in Gloomhaven, the board game, where there are cultists, and over the course of time they can randomly take an action where they injure themselves and summon skeletons.
Oh, that's cool.
So we were picturing like they're pulling their own bones out and they're becoming skeletons or something, but like maybe you have cultists that are just like ritual summoning things in the middle of combat, and everyone's like they're taking damage to do it, so it's kind of balanced, but it's really fun to see.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'd react if I saw a ritual happen right in front of me, and that would be fantastic.
Moving on to number 4, we have having secondary goals in your combat, more so than just kill the baddies. So you wanna lead us on that one?
Absolutely. One of the best parts, another one of my favorite memorable, wow, I have a lot of memorable combat experiences.
Yeah.
One of my favorite experiences was when the party was infiltrating a cult. They didn't realize that not everybody inside the cult was the cult. They thought that everyone was bad, but once they went in, it was essentially, I can only describe as an Amazon warehouse in fantasy, where they're just a bunch of workers trying to get through the day, they're shipping through their containers and trying to get through the business, not even knowing what the containers hold. And so the party went in, and the cultists, when they found out they but they were found out, they started attacking the party. But some were regular people, and sometimes they would take a hostage, or sometimes the party wouldn't know if a bad guy was a bad guy or just a regular Amazon worker trying to get out of there. So having a secondary goal of we need to save the civilians from death, granted you'll have to have good party members.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, if you have a secondary goal, like the main goal is to defeat the cult, but the secondary goal is try and minimize as many casualties as possible. We don't like casualties, obviously, because we're all good players here, right?
Yeah, totally. No, I like the idea of a big bad evil corporation just hiring minimum wage help that's just random citizens.
Oh, yeah.
And so you go in there and they're just like, I just work here. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, some other secondary goals could be like, don't cause a commotion. So you could have it be like, you're on a stealth operation, you got to sneak in, sneak out. And so maybe the DM draws like, what I like to do is I draw a pie chart, which I kind of take from Blades in the Dark, which is another RPG. I draw a pie chart, and every time they do something loud or make a commotion or take too long or do something that might raise an alarm, I fill in a little piece of that pie chart, and when they reach the end, that's when the authorities are called, and they need to get out of there fast. But other options are like maybe the place is under siege. You got to get the gate closed before reinforcements arrive. Or maybe, I wrote some down. Maybe you need to pull the lever. That's one of my favorite things. Like,
Yep.
literally, like, you got to go pull the lever, or the big bad has a death ray, and you got to go deactivate it before a certain round of combat, or it's going to go off. Things like that make the combat more interesting than just constantly being like, all right, we're in combat, kill the thing. We're in combat, kill the thing. We're in combat, kill the thing. Especially at high levels now, that becomes really easy.
To kill the thing, yeah.
Because in 5e, at least, players are really strong. The player characters, when you get to high levels, I'm sure a lot of DMs out there understand, the players get really strong. So having a secondary goal that requires more cognitive thought than just
Kill it. Yeah.
make it a lot more interesting. Which I guess leads us into number 5, which is a little bit of a curve from what we've been talking about, and it's role-playing the things that you're doing in combat rather than just saying that you do them.
Absolutely. It's one of the best forms of immersions. So if you learn that you have a spell called Firebolt, right? You're like, cool, I have a cantrip. I shoot Firebolt, it gets hit. Okay. Maybe if you're running a 6-person campaign, you got to keep things fast. You don't have much time. But if you can take your time, especially encourage the players to say, I cast Firebolt targeting his hand, right? To try and affect like a staff he's holding. Then you can have them roll and then have other things roll, and then you could have even like a burnt hand. So anytime he tries to do something, it's a disadvantage.
Well, even describing what the Firebolt looks like even the most basic spells, which we take for granted, like I cast Firebolt, I cast Eldritch Blast.
Yep.
It's every spell can be interesting, even the cantrips, where it's like you describe, like I wave my hand around and I swipe some sulfur across my finger as a blaze of fire engulfs my hand. I then hurl it in a bolt at the area. Like being able to describe that, it's just a firebolt, but like that's fun.
Absolutely. Even if you can give your players creativity thematically, like if their fire is so hot, it's blue. Give me Azula vibes from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Or like an artificer often has entirely about flavor is I cast Thorn Whip, but I'm actually like throwing barbed wire at them.
Yeah.
Something like that. It doesn't even have to be magical. You can describe it through flavor to be whatever it is.
Oh yeah. And you can also change, even just as simple as changing color. Like maybe your character, all of their fire is blue. And so their firebolt is blue. And all of their fire spells, so they cast fireball, it's an explosion of blue flame. It doesn't do anything mechanically, but it's just cool.
Absolutely. And it's one of the ways that you can start doing this yourself. Even if your players are a little new, or if they don't really typically do this, they say, I stab him, whatnot. As soon as they say, I stab him, you can start saying, as his knife hits the back of the gnoll screams in pain, and just getting immersed by saying what the thing is doing instead of it takes 5 damage, move on. It says it takes 5 damage from the twisting pain of the knife in the back.
Yeah, and that's a great thing, especially for new players, to get that going. And as they become more comfortable, like you're describing everything they're doing. They're just like, I stab it, or I cast my spell, and then you describe it for them. As you do that more and more, they're going to start doing it themselves. And when they do, you want to take a step back and let them do it. Don't have them describe it and then change what happens and describe it yourself. Let them take up that space. Let them have the fun of saying what their spells and attacks look like.
This is where Critical Role got it really right, is the how do you want to do this?
Yep.
Because when you say to your players, how do you want to do this? And they know that they've killed it, that gives them a window into the immersion to shred the clothing off of a bad thing and stabbing it right in the heart, or that was a bad description. Like if you cast a thunder wave, shattering the bones of whatever's inside and wanting it, like you could, once you say how you want to do this, it allows them to take control of the narrative and have that cooperative storytelling.
Well, and even if they're just a little creative, if you're like, how do you want to do this? And it takes them a moment, they don't really know what to say. Like, if they say, like, if they're casting Thunder Wave and it's killing it, there's like, I say, how do you want to do this? Like, I want to, like, blow its head off. And I was like, sure. And then I, as the DM, will then give a theatrical version of how they blow their head off. Maybe I'm like, you cast Thunder Wave and you watch as your Thunder Wave ripples through its body as its spine cracks going up, and its head, where it was slashed by the rogue a couple turns ago, just kind of blows clean off. And then everyone at the table was like, yeah, that was awesome. So literally, whenever there's a, how do you want to do this, and you'll see it in Critical Role too, they say how they want to do it, and then Matthew Mercer will, he'll extrapolate on that, and he'll say, okay, you're going to do it like that, and here's what it looks like.
Oh, yeah.
So that's just 5 steps to make your combat more interesting. We've got playing around with terrain and cover. We have having phases or events in your combat that happen over time. We have secondary goals, things that the players are trying to accomplish, things that they're trying to reach or deactivate. And then we have role-playing your spells and role-playing what your characters are doing. Get those players involved in the combat.
And you can't forget about legendary actions.
And the one that I forgot about, legendary actions and lair actions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's all we have for you today.
Stay tuned for some more tips and tricks, and we'll teach you how to make every game legendary.